Good morning.
Good morning.
I feel a bit nervous because, unlike my colleagues, I have no PowerPoint slides. And I remember many times doing PowerPoint slides in this room. So let me say it's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to follow my mentor, Robin Ely. I knew that I probably should have said no when Robin asked me to do this because she always frames things as this is going to be easy for you to do. It's not a heavy lift, right? So I say, okay, I think I'm just going to, maybe do a fireside chat or something. She sends me a note. Where's the title for your talk? I say, what talk? I thought I was just sitting on a panel. So then, as Robin has been wont to do for the over 30 years that we've been journeying together, she sends me something that sounds, pretty simple. And then it turns out to be amazingly provocative in some way, always related to who I am and what the hell am I doing. My invitation here was framed around the fact that I am now president of Morehouse College, historically black college. I can't pretend to speak for all historically black colleges, although we do have much in common, but mostly it is in the fact that our dedication is to serve black populations of students. Morehouse College is the only historically black college that has been singularly dedicated to the education of men throughout its history and continues to be. And as I listened to Kathy, I realized that there's lots of overlap. In many ways, I could have taken out some words and plugged it in, and it would be similar. But what I want to do is share with you some reflections that this invitation prompted me to have about what are we doing at Morehouse, and do we continue to do what we've always done? You guys have probably heard this quote, but I wasn't here yesterday. So when Robin sends me no, you're giving a talk, here's what we sent you. Made it clear you're giving a talk. It's got a quote. Audre Lorde quote. Audre Lorde is a black woman. The quote, "For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change." Now, the last sentence of this is perhaps the most profound. And this fact is only threatening to she has women, but if I plug in black men, who still define the master's house as their only, and I undermine only, source of support. Right? And there's a lot in this to reflect on, and I must have read it 5 times, including at 5:30 this morning. And each time I read it, a new layer of consideration or contradiction and paradox emerged for me. So on one hand, it would be simple for me to say that Morehouse has always stood in opposition to the master's house. Formed in 1867, into the Civil War, for black men who had no other option if they were to be educated, formerly enslaved. So the idea, right, that we were formed in opposition to the master's house because we couldn't get in, and that gives us an easy off-ramp to say we're not about the master's house. Or the contradiction is you could say that we're defined by the master's house. He won't let me in his house, so I'm going to build one that looks just like his. And so I'm going to adopt his tools, I'm going to adopt his values. In one, we stand in opposition to the master's house. In the other, we're trying to master the master's house. If I think about Morehouse College, on one hand, we have the evidence of our opposition. The greatest symbol of it is Martin Luther King. He was a Morehouse man. At Morehouse, we like to say, much of the world knows Morehouse because they know King. What they don't know is that but for Morehouse, there would be no King. Benjamin Elijah Mays, a great voice for education of Black people. The Atlanta student movement, which was one of the cradles of what began the civil rights movement in this country. Students from Morehouse, Spelman, and other schools in the Atlanta University Center. The youngest person to be among the first freedom riders, Morehouse student. Spike Lee, Morehouse student. Raphael Warnock, current senator from Georgia. Morehouse College, stand in opposition, right? Defying the master's house. On the other hand, at the turn of the century, there was a debate about what education for Negroes should look like. One was it should be industrial education. But at Morehouse, the leadership said, no, we're going to be a liberal arts college. Why? Because some of the early leaders, in particular a guy named John Hope, had gone to Ivy League schools. They were among those few Negroes who got to go to Brown and Cornell, right? So we're going to be liberal arts, the master's house. If you look at our graduates, we have what I call a secret society on Wall Street. It's amazing how many Black men who are successful on Wall Street, many of them actually were my students here at the Harvard Business School or from Morehouse College. We produce more Black male PhDs, men who go on to get PhDs, any other school. 90% of them go to what we call PWIs, predominantly white institutions, to do that, and most of them to elite. We're among the top 3 major feeders of Black men to the Harvard Business School over the last 3 decades. If you follow, current culture, you probably saw that we just did a partnership with Ralph Lauren, who, is said to define, right, American fashion, but really, to sort of define what it means to be an American. And we rely heavily on white money, have since our inception. So, contradiction. And we refer to, we have a metaphor about bricks, and each student is a brick. And my original title was Morehouse Men Colluding while Undermining the Master's House, brick by brick, meaning each one is prepared to go out brick by brick, right, and undermine the master's house. And so I go back to the Audre Lorde quote, and she says, we can temporarily beat him with his tools. So then I have to ask myself, right, is what we've been doing is temporarily beating him with his tools, but not really doing things that transform the house. So simply educating Black men who can be acceptable to white institutions and survive them is a temporary victory. A colleague who many of you know, and certainly Robin and I know well, Deb Meyerson called tempered radicals, meaning individuals who occupy legitimating positions, but who are engaged in radical change in some way to transform their organizations. For Morehouse College, that means transforming them in ways that create more just, more accessible, right, more racially open, more diverse organizations. And I believe that we are creating tempered radicals. Now, my belief is based on my understanding of developmental psychology, as well as my understanding of group dynamics. And if you think about it, when between 17 and 23, which is the age group that most of our students in, it means that these young people come to these institutions during the most important period of adult development. Literally, we know neurologically they will have a different brain at 23 than they do at 17 when they arrive. I know that personally because I have 3 children who, when they left at 17, they thought I didn't know jack. At 23, they thought I had grown so much in those 4 years. It's the period when they're answering the critical questions. Who am I? What can I do in the world? What do I owe the world? What does the world owe me? They build a foundation that launches them into the world. So now, I'm going to use a tape here to take you to the house. To say, if you say, well, what is this house? And what is the water? Huh? Somebody say something? What are you doing? Ethiopia, don't start it yet? You got it at 53? Okay, all right, hold on. She's in a hurry. Right? You say, what are they doing at this house? So this is Otis Moss Iii. He is a second generation Morehouse man. His father went to Morehouse. His father was one of those individuals who organized the Atlanta student movement. He became a prophetic voice in the black church. His son is now considered one of the prophetic voices, not just in the black church, but globally as a minister. And now the third generation is on our campus, right? So, and he went on to get his doctorate from University of Chicago in theology, and I think he got his master's at Yale. So he went to the master's house, did pretty well. So we have something called Founders Day, and he came to speak at our Founders Day this year. And so I'm going to play this, and as we say at Morehouse, welcome to the house.
To you, the men of this house, I have been charged on this day, what we normally call Founders Day, but more appropriately is our ancestral convocation. This day we honor the fact that the Spirit of God consecrated a dream in the heart of a people who were born beautiful and black, living just west of the Savannah River in a southern hamlet called Augusta, Georgia. The space where you matriculate was birthed during the height of racial terror and civic indifference, a free man of African ancestry who dared pray, work, and organize, and had the audacity to organize faith communities that we call the church. That the church would be a subversive educational space, not to provide labor for resentful former plantation owners, nor show white America that we are just as good as they are. But William Jefferson White, not unlike the sons of Issachar, knew what to do and understood the times. May I speak to the men of this house. This is the house. This house was built by prayer. This is the house audacity built. This is the house ingenuity built. This is the house spiritual brilliance and ethical resolve built. This house, this Morehouse, did not have the benefit of wealth produced from the immoral trade of human flesh we call slavery. There was no cotton, tobacco, or sugarcane money to fund scholarships and endowed chairs. We are not an Ivy institution, and I say that with words of authority, and at the same time, I'm throwing some shade at some other schools. We are not a school built on black blood with its doors closed to black bodies. Do not get it twisted, brothers. It would be a downgrade to attempt to fashion ourselves after Harvard, Yale, Duke, Stanford, or Princeton. We have a mission unlike any institution. It's clear from our ancestral heritage that we carry a sacred privilege and a divine torch, and all of us collectively drink from the ancient well of our ancestors on this sacred ground we call Morehouse. May I speak to the brothers of this house. I speak this day to know as one who is nurtured under the canopy of this sacred house, this Morehouse. This is the space where you get to be one among many instead of being just one of the few. Here in this house, no one will ever tell you, you are so articulate, as if elocutionary skills and verbal dexterities are a rarity among our people. In this house, your academic excellence will not be challenged as affirmative action, nor your love of black history and culture will be banned because they say it's critical race theory. In this house, our blackness will not be weaponized. In this house, you do not have to put up with people who've been haunted by antebellum ghosts and Confederate myths, who think patriotism and voter suppression go hand in hand. In this house, you will not be an exotic oddity, a good Negro, a credit to your race, or a cultural tutor of your roommate who wants to know all of the nuances of trap music, bounce house, and the history of the dirty South so that he can start a business and co-opt your culture. In this house, brilliance is expected, leadership is the norm, service is the standard, activism is our brand, grinding is our ethic, and having a side hustle is typical, and having swag is just what we do. In this house,
Reverend Moss clearly has amazing oratorical skills, what I was struck by was we post everything at Morehouse, and what was very clear is that he captured what the experience is that young men have in those important developmental years, young black men. And Morehouse is a place where the average high school grade point average, I think, is 3.5. 70% of our students get into, in addition to Morehouse, at least one top 50 college or university. And it's also a place where 25% of our students come from college-educated families. About 25% of our students come from families where one parent has had exposure to higher education but didn't finish. The other 50% come from families that are first-generation college. 60% are Pell eligible. For these young men, part of what I think happens in this most important developmental period is that they come to know that the master's house is not their only source of support. And if you're going to go into a world where, and most of them, they don't go work in 90% go work in predominantly white organizations, just like those who graduate from Harvard and Yale. But being able to make the choice when you're out in that world about where's the point at which the master's tools are no longer appropriate if I really want to make a difference, is about not being so tied to the master's house. And we can ask the question, what is the master's house? I would say that it is both a psychological and a material space. And the psychological space of the master's house is designed to undermine one's sense of blackness as a value. Even if we get real about it, there are many black people who have never been in a space of black excellence as an expectation. And therefore, they think, right, that excellence can only be measured by the master's tools, only be brought about by the master's tools, as opposed to knowing when to use the master's tools, but also knowing when to walk away from them. So you take, for example, Dr. King. He walked away from the master's tools. In his period, the master had two tools: the courts and violence. He chose nonviolence. That was not the master's tool to transform. And I think that there are many other examples that I could go through that suggest that what happens at a place like Morehouse during that development, that most important developmental period, is something foundational that prepares them disproportionately compared to those who go to predominantly white institutions, which I did, to go out and be tempered radicals. Part of what, and even on the business side, we've done some research. Higher proportion of black men who go to Morehouse go create their own businesses than black men who go to predominantly white Ivy League institutions. And part of going out to create your own business as a black person who can survive materially in the master's house and do well, right, is a sense of, right, excellence is not defined by the master's house. And my sole source of support is not the master's house. I went to Yale undergrad. Not once in my entire career has someone that I went to undergraduate with, unlike graduate school, helped me in my career. You come out of Morehouse, the power of that network, and you just show up and say, I went to Morehouse. Right? It's a secret society. So I'll stop there.